the good part, we have a video. Before we launch into this panel discussion, please direct your attention to this brief or short educational video on snowpack to tap from our friends at WESTMARC.
In Arizona, it's sort of the haves and the have-not when it comes to precipitation. Of course, the greater Phoenix area and the majority of Arizona's population lives in the Sonoran Delta, and we're lucky to get 7 or 8 inches of rain a year. Then we have this spine of mountains through the central part of the state, covered with beautiful forests, but that's the source of our drinking water. All the rain and snow that falls there creates runoff that fills our reservoir system, and it's that water that we use here in the valley to provide for all of our water needs. If our reservoirs are full, we have 3 full years of water supply stored in our reservoirs. That's how we manage to get through these dry years that we have. We utilize the water that we stored and captured in a wet year, and that helps us through the period when it's dry and we don't get the runoff that we need. We live in a desert climate, and we need to plan for drought all the time. And if we do that, we're never going to be surprised. When we think about climate change, we're talking about incrementally changing our climate within a climate that has huge variability. So it will take probably decades before we can actually discern the effects of climate change. So it's very important for us to really stay the course on how we manage, because we anticipate that climate change may make droughts a little bit deeper, a little bit more severe. When you look back at SRP's entire history, we have always been at the forefront of planning for changes in water use, water demand, water infrastructure. We're always thinking ahead, and it's no different today. We are, if not leading, we are funding research into climate change. We're participating in climate change research. We are looking at ways to better manage water supply in the reservoirs, underground, other cooperative agreements with others, and we're looking at our infrastructure. Right now we're thinking about building an interconnect facility at the CAP that will take our water into their system. Right now we can bring their water into ours, but to truly integrate water supply management throughout the central part of Arizona, we need to tie these two systems together. We need to look more at groundwater recharge. We have Roosevelt Dam, which has a huge amount of flood control space available. That's an opportunity to potentially store water temporarily. In Arizona, water is so precious that we need to use every drop to its utmost ability and care for it. That doesn't mean don't use water if you need it, but really take care and use that water to the best of its ability. I'm Charlie Espen, manager of the surface water resources at the Salt River Project.
Please welcome to the stage Panel 2 Moderator, Central Arizona Groundwater Replenishment District Manager, Laura Grignano.
Good morning, everyone. And thank you, Mike, for that introduction. It's a pleasure to be with you all today and serve as one of your moderators. We have another impressive panel for you that I'm sure will leave you well-informed and water experts yourselves by the end of the day. As you heard CAP's General Manager Berman mention, as well as Panel 1, the importance of infrastructure, of partnership, of demand management, of diversification, and new water supplies. Those all are going to be the way that we solve the challenges facing us today. And we're hoping that Panel 2 can provide some more information and elaborate a little bit about these important factors. With that, please help me welcome my fellow panelists to the stage. So as Ron and Doug are making their way up to the stage, just a little bit about myself for those that you don't know me. I've been in water management in Arizona for 25 years now. I have started out at the Department of Water Resources myself for almost 14 years. I spent 2 years at APS in the Water Resource Planning section, and I've spent the last 10 years at CAP. I've had the honor to be the manager of the Central Arizona Groundwater Replenishment District for the last 5 years. So that's a little bit about myself. Now I'm going to work my way over to the chairs and we can introduce the other panelists. Good morning. Okay, great. Thank you. So I'm honored to be sitting up here today with two of my colleagues that I really appreciate working with and have quite a long history with. Ron and Doug, if you'd like to introduce yourselves, that would be great. Maybe a little bit, how long have you been working in the field of Arizona water management, the organization that you work for currently, and your role there.
Thanks, Laura, and thank you all for having me today. So I'm the manager of water system projects at SRP. Been working in the water field for about a decade now. Most of that time at SRP, but a couple years at the Bureau of Reclamation as well. I have the responsibility of managing a really incredible group of subject matter experts, engineers, project managers, and really what we're responsible for is looking for the next generation of operational and infrastructure projects to make sure that SRP's system is set up to serve the next 100 years of the Valley's water needs. And so I'll talk about a number of those projects today, but that's really the big picture is how do we adapt our current operations using our current infrastructure? How do we look at new infrastructure improvements that can help, as Leslie said earlier, squeeze the last drops out of the local supplies we have before we go to the sort of lesser low-hanging fruit out there in terms of next buckets of water.
Thanks, Rob. So thank you for having me. I'm Doug Dunham. Currently, I'm with EPCOR Water. I've been doing water management in Arizona for over 35 years, including about 20 at the Arizona Department of Water Resources, whereas, among other things, running the Assured and Adequate Water Supply Program, the Recharge Program, wells, conservation programs, and wound up there as their legislative liaison and their ombudsman for the department. EPCOR, if you don't know, aren't familiar with us, we are a private utility, largest private utility in the state, largest private utility in the Southwest. We operate systems along the Colorado River, in Metro Phoenix, down in Santan Valley, and we have systems in New Mexico and Texas. And so we have quite a diverse portfolio, different water needs across the Southwest that we manage water for, and I look forward to our discussion.
Great. Well, thank you both. Let's just dive into the discussion now, and I'll start with you, Doug. Earlier, we heard from panel one speakers on water resource management. We had a 101. Thank you, Sarah, for that great overview of water resources in Arizona and the Valley. Doug, can you please elaborate a bit on the water sources available to the West Valley, and how do they support resiliency?
Certainly. Well, for example, our FRIA system, so that's our main system in the West Valley, we have multiple sources that we rely on. And so the resiliency, I think, really comes from having these multiple sources. And that's one of the blessings of Arizona, is that there are multiple sources and you're not relying on any one specific source that would be really subject to shortage. So we have surface water from the FRIA River. So that's actually a different river system other than the Salt Verde system that we obtain our surface water through. We also have our CAP allocation, so another surface water source. And then the valley overall, and the West Valley in particular, happens to sit over a really big, deep, highly productive aquifer. So there's large groundwater reserves that we can use as cushions for times of shortage during drought periods when our surface water may be constrained. And then lastly, reclaim. And we reuse nearly 100% of all effluent that we produce. And so those can be not necessarily directly reused, but we do it through offsetting other groundwater uses, other surface water uses for landscaping, use on golf courses, industrial uses, cooling, etc. And if you folks don't know, the Valley metro area uses reclaimed water a great deal. And so the continent's largest nuclear power plant, Palo Verde nuclear power plant, is 100% cooled with reclaimed water. So the state has done, and the region has done a very good job of maximizing that use, and we'll continue to do that moving forward.
Great, thank you. And speaking of resiliency, we've heard in the news, and we heard a little bit earlier today about the dire conditions of Lake Mead and Powell. And yet, ironically, this winter, we've been very lucky, was a banner year in our local watersheds, causing SRP the need to release a significant amount of water from its reservoirs on the Verde River. So Ron, can you please elaborate a little bit about water augmentation opportunities on the Verde and how those supplies may be used to support Central and Arizona and the West Valley?
Yeah, definitely. And can I ask, is the map up on the screen? SRP system now? Not yet. Okay, so as it's coming up, so if you're not familiar with the Verde River, SRP has two dams on the Verde River. The lower dam, the larger of the two, is called Bartlett Dam. The upper dam and reservoir is called Horseshoe Dam and Reservoir. So this project really stemmed from an issue that SRP and City of Phoenix were having with sedimentation in Horseshoe Reservoir. And over the last few years, as Leslie mentioned, we've been working on this project for a long time, and these types of projects are very long lead time projects. As we were identifying solutions for SRP and City of Phoenix's problem, we identified opportunities to really help with water resiliency in Central Arizona. And so we're working with 23 funding partners, including almost all of the municipalities in the Valley, Buckeye Water Conservation District out here in the far West Valley, EPCOR, Arizona Water Company, to fund a federal study with the Bureau of Reclamation to investigate this option. And so you can see on the map how the Bartlett Dam is circled up there. You can see this Bartlett Dam modification concept is what we're looking at. And it's really not a new piece of technology, but a modern approach to operations is what we're looking at. So expanding the storage capacity on the Verde River by about double the current capacity, be able to leverage floodwaters, very wet years when they happen. And so if you haven't seen the flows in the Salt River or been paying attention to snowpack on the Verde River watershed, I'll just tell you, it's significant. As Leslie mentioned, it's multiple times over our average flows. And in fact, this year we would have been able to fill completely the proposed modified Bartlett Dam. So it's a great year as an example of what we're trying to do with all the partnership on this project. The new reservoir could hold about 350,000 acre-feet of additional water supplies in these wet years, like this year. And it would produce enough water to serve about 350,000 families per year on average. So a really significant additional supply to the valley, but it's not the total solution for the West Valley, for Central Arizona as a whole. So one of those sort of low hanging fruit options we have to really squeeze efficiency out of our existing system. One of the big benefits of this project is, as Ms. Porter mentioned at the beginning, SRP supplies are really contained to our service area, that 330 square mile area that was decreed in the early 1900s. The supplies from this new reservoir could be used outside of it. So we're really looking at solutions to help support the region's supplies, while also keeping users in the basin whole. So looking at how we can improve everybody without hurting those that currently have rights on the system. A really key factor as we're thinking about water management in the future.
Thank you, and I know that both EPCOR and CAGRD are part of that process, and we really appreciate the good work that you're doing in facilitating that group and those discussions on that important project. So Ron, while we still have the map up on the screen, can you please talk about the work SRP and many partners in the West Valley are doing to improve flood operations at Roosevelt Dam and why this is important for the region's water resiliency?
Yeah, so I mentioned partnership on the last project on the Bartlett Dam modification. This is a common theme with all of these projects, really regional solutions to improve our flexibility for water operations, for moving water where it's needed. Because as we're preparing for climate change, we know being able to adapt to variability will be the key to our success. The good news is that's the baseline of how all of our water systems have been designed on these rivers. They've been highly variable rivers from the beginning. So on the Roosevelt Flood Control Space Operational Flexibility Project, what we're really looking at is how we improve water operations while not diminishing our ability to manage large flood events. This is another great year. This year is a great example for this project as well. We would have been able to fully utilize the increased flexibility that we're seeking from the Army Corps of Engineers. This project, we have more than 13 partners, including tribal, municipal, and industrial, and agricultural users, to really look at how we can leverage these floodwaters and put water to use. This project can produce as much as 110,000 acre-feet per year in these wet years. It's about enough water, again, to serve about 350,000 households for a year. And this year, we would have been able to fill completely the space that we're looking at that increased flexibility in. So this project, unlike the Bartlett project, requires no new infrastructure. It's really negotiating with the federal government how we can tweak our operations to improve water efficiency while not sacrificing safety. This project is expected to be approved by the end of this calendar year. The Bartlett Dam Modification Project could be operational as soon as 10 years, so a bit longer out. But the partnership, the collaboration not only with local and federal and state agencies is going to be really critical on all of these projects to make sure we can be as efficient as possible. And one key piece that we're looking to CAP to help us understand is, as these different water augmentation projects are coming up on the SRP system elsewhere along the CAP canal, how the CAP system can be used to help move water from where it's available to where it's needed. So Laura, maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Thanks, Ron. Yes, and that's a really important point. For many years, it has been contemplated that the CAP canal could move other sources of water. And in 2017, there was an important agreement that was signed between CAP and the Bureau of Reclamation, and that was called the System Use Agreement. Now, the System Use Agreement provides the framework for moving non-CAP water supplies through the CAP canal. And those supplies could be new supplies, brand new supplies coming in to folks like in the West Valley instead of pumping groundwater. And they could also be supplies to what we use the term firm, and that means essentially augment or replace water, CAP water that may be shorted during these the drought that we are encountering now. And there's also, the document addresses exchanges, which are essentially creative ways that subcontractors and contractors can exchange water with each other and to get the water where it makes the most sense. So that was a really important document. There are a few things that still need to be done in terms of some water quality guidelines, as well as some system improvement projects that CAP is working on with the Bureau of Reclamation to actually make this put this system use into use. We're hopeful and we're projecting that by 2026, we should be moving some non-project water through the canal. So. All right, I'm going to move to Doug now, and from your perspective, what is the role of private utilities and public-private partnerships in developing needed infrastructure and water supplies?
Great question, and I got to thank Laura here, because she gets to do double duty here today as moderator and panelist, so way to go. So public-private partnerships, I think there's a lot of opportunities in the future as we move forward to help leverage some private equity that's out there. Obviously, these large projects are going to take a lot of capital to get off the ground. Although there's been recently some federal money available to do some of this, it's really hard. The days of the big reclamation projects are few, and it's been, CAP was basically the last big one, SRP was the first big one, so we can kind of book in the reclamation projects. But for example, our system, water provider system that we have in Texas, we act as a wholesaler to several communities out there. Very large pipeline, and it was actually the largest public-private water infrastructure project in the country when we initiated that. So that's an example of being able to help solve issues on a regional basis. I think locally, we're looking at, it was mentioned that maybe importation of groundwater into the Phoenix AMA. We're looking at partnering with and providing the infrastructure for a couple of cities that are looking to bring that water in. And so that's another great example of where we can step up and partner with public utilities.
Great, thanks, Doug. And that last project you just mentioned, EPCOR would play an important role in getting the water that's pumped from wells to the CAP canal. And again, then that's where the system use agreement would come into place, and we could move that imported groundwater into the valley as a supply that could be used to meet our needs. So thank you for that important role. I might add that the CAGRD in 2014 worked with Liberty Utilities here in the West Valley, and we were excited about that project. It was the first public-private partnership in terms of building a recharge facility. CAGRD and Liberty Utilities worked to build that project, and now it's called SEEP, the Sustainable Effluent to Aquifer Project, and that's here in the area. And CAGRD also was able to acquire a 100-year lease for effluent from Liberty Utilities. So that was a way we could diversify our portfolio because most of the water that we use currently to replenish groundwater pumping is CAP water. So just like many other entities, CAGRD has to manage its portfolio to make sure that we can meet our members' needs when there are shortages to the CAP system. All right, Ron, next question. So Leslie Myers mentioned this earlier, but SRP and CAP systems are currently interconnected near Granite Reef Dam. But as we had heard, this is really only currently a one-way interconnection that allows water from CAP to enter SRP's system. Can you please talk about why SRP and CAP and other regional partners are looking at adding a new interconnect to allow water to move from SRP's system into CAP's canal?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And if we can have the slide up that has the SRP service area map, same one as before, I think that helps a little too. As Ms. Porter mentioned at the beginning, the water type is really important, right? What this water is classified as critical. And as Leslie said, back when the CAP was getting constructed in the early 90s, there was the foresight that, hey, we might want some flexibility to move water supplies into SRP's service area. You can see on the map, the big green dots are all the water treatment plants in central Arizona. So you can see there, the chicken pox are generally concentrated along blue lines. Those blue lines are canals. And so having the ability to move water from CAP system and SRP system to get to all those water treatment plants will be ever more important during times of shortage, during times of heightened variability on SRP or the CAP system. And so what we're looking at today is adding a new interconnect that would allow water supplies from SRP system to be put into the CAP. And so not only would we be able to look at existing supplies on the system, like those contained behind Roosevelt Dam, supplies that Phoenix has at Horseshoe Reservoir, but also be looking at long-term storage credits or those underground groundwater credits that have been previously stored by cities and water providers to prepare and back up supplies for shortages. Millions of acre feet have been stored within SRP's service area, and you can see the other chicken pox on the map, I believe they're blue dots, are the 270 groundwater wells that Leslie mentioned. And not all water providers have as many wells as are needed to really recover that water that's put underground. So part of the regional solution going forward is as we actively bank our water supplies and store them underground, making sure we have operational systems that can recover that water when it's needed and then move it where it's needed is really important. And I think the simplest way to understand this project is it's a couple hundred meters or yards or couple thousand feet, if you will, to connect the two systems with a pipe that creates access to more than 200, how many miles of CAP? 336. Creates connectivity to the entire CAP service area. So really being able to get wet water where it's needed, when it's needed, in the future is going to be really critical. And this is really a pragmatic and small piece of infrastructure to create that connectivity to all those water treatment plants and all those different water supplies.
Thank you, and CAP appreciates the work and partnership that we are doing now with SRP on that important project. And I might add on some of the recovery efforts that Ron was mentioning and that you've heard a little bit earlier today. The Arizona Water Banking Authority has stored over 3 million, I think it's 3.7 million acre feet. That's a lot of water underground over the last few decades, 4 times just like we're now starting to face. And we've done a lot of planning on how that water will be recovered and used by water providers to augment their supplies, their CAP supplies. And SRP will be an important partner. And the water providers themselves have infrastructure themselves. Some, it is different, as Ron mentioned, some have more than others. But regionally working together, we'll be able to recover the water that we need. I believe I was at a water bank meeting yesterday, and it looks like the majority of the water will be recovered by the subcontractors themselves through their infrastructure, or maybe they partner with another entity that has infrastructure. I think you may have heard the City of Phoenix and the City of Tucson have an agreement for such recovery and exchange. CAP will be providing some recovered water, what we call direct recovery, right into the canal. And just to give folks an update on some of that work CAP's doing, we're looking at drilling some wells in the next few months out in the Tonopah area. And they would be pilot wells, pilot recovery wells, that would recover that water that has been stored there over the years, and with some treatment, then put that water into the CAP canal. Again, that's where the system use agreement is going to play an important role in allowing that water to be used through the canal. So Doug, can you talk a little bit more about the role of regional cooperation among water providers and partners?
Yeah, that's going to be key to our future, particularly the next 5 to 10, 15 years as we try to build this bridge out for these long-term projects. These Sal was mentioned earlier, those kinds of things. So currently we've got some interconnects with the City of Phoenix, for example. The City of Phoenix is growing north along I-17. Didn't have quite enough infrastructure in place to be able to support all that growth. We were able to take into our system there at Anthem and treat the water for them and then wheel it over to those communities as that infrastructure grew out. Right now, we're looking at another project. I think most folks have heard about the Rio Verde foothills area that's been in the news a lot, where the community was relying on all water. The original source of that was from the city of Scottsdale, and as part of their drought response, they cut that supply off. So EPCOR has stepped in with REACH to try to provide a long-term solution, and one of those options that we're putting in place is cooperation with SRP. And what we'll be able to do then is actually convert some stored reclaimed water and some other CAP stored water. And through a series of about 7 or 8 different water movements, exchanges, and my folks called me crazy for putting this stuff together. It's like worse than an NBA trade. So we're able to move water around through these series of exchanges and then provide that water to SRP. And in exchange for that, we're able to actually source the wet water for the standpipe from the Verde River. So that's a great example of having this regional cooperation, bringing a wet water supply to somebody who doesn't have it at the moment.
Well, thank you, and it's wonderful to hear that there's a solution to that problem. All right, well, we're getting a little low on time. I know We have some questions coming in. If we don't get to answer your questions now, please approach Ron, Doug, or I afterwards and ask those questions because we'd be happy to answer those. Our last question I'm gonna focus on conservation, and we've heard a little bit about demand management. Again, there's no silver bullet, and it's gonna take all of these things to move into the future, and conservation, water efficiency is a really big part of that. And so I wanted just each of us to take a few minutes just to talk about conservation of water efficiency and how they contribute to resiliency, and what businesses and residents can do to improve regional water efficiency and conservation efforts. And I may just start because I want to tout a new program that the CAGRD just kicked off with the home builders, both Central and Southern Arizona home builders. CAGRD, we're not a direct water provider. We work with water providers and we replenish the water that they pump. So we didn't want to step on anyone's toes because water providers have great conservation programs and efforts already in place. So CAGRD wanted to find kind of our own niche in a way that we could augment and just supplement what was already, the good work that was already being done. And so we've just recently kicked off what we're calling the WESTMARC. I think that's the acronym that we decided. The Water Efficiency Construction Incentive Program. And we're incentivizing the building of WaterSense 2.0 homes in the CAGRD area. And so we have an application and program details on our website at cagrd.com, and home builders can start applying in June for this incentive. And we're incentivizing $1,000 per home because that will, right from the beginning, set that house up for less water demand moving into the future. It will also then be less groundwater pumped, and it will be less water supplies that the CAGRD has to then go out and acquire, renewable supplies, to replenish that. So I will get off my soap box here, and then pass it to Ron and Doug.
Yeah, so I'll start with the website, so you can write it down. Sintra asked to make sure we give you somewhat of a call to action on what you can do to help conserve. And so srp.net/conservation, srp.net/conservation. You can learn more about how SRP supports conservation within our city. Similar to the CAGRD, we're not a direct potable water provider, so we really support the city's conservation programs. But that website also has an online shop where you can get discounts on water-saving appliances, learn how to better landscape your garden, reduce water use, which is actually one of the biggest ways you can reduce use, whether in your home or at your business. And also find out more about SRP's water conservation program, where you can get big discounts on smart irrigation controllers. Those will help you not be that guy or that lady or that person that has their sprinklers running when it's raining outside. So definitely a good way to be part of the solution. But these programs and these partnerships have been really successful, and one of the reasons SRP is today looking at how we can help the region and not really just focusing on ourselves is because we've seen our water use within our service area decrease by about 30% since 1980. So that's a similar trend to what Ms. Porter showed on her statewide graph, but that's really a function of two things. So one part is reduced agricultural lands within our service area. As those lands go from ag to urban, less water per acre is used. But we also see a trend, and this is consistent across the country, where newer homes use less water. In Arizona, we're seeing more and more xeriscape, but also as homes are getting remodeled, we're seeing higher water use or lower water use from more efficient appliances. So these are all things that one-off doesn't make a huge difference, but as we all collectively implement them, can have a real strong impact and be part of the overall solution. So I think we always say when we're thinking about water management, conservation isn't the solution, but it's part of the solution.
Yeah, I don't know if I can't see the screen, but would you put that water use graph back up? That somebody stole my thunder, thank you, Sarah, on that one. One of the things I want to touch on from the statewide perspective is, I think Clint mentioned it, that Arizona gets a bad rap for wasting water. If you read the New York Times, we shouldn't even be here in the desert, right? We should all pack up and go home. But we were one of the first states to have mandatory conservation requirements in state law. And when they passed the groundwater code in 1980, that was one of the initial pieces of it. And if the graph's up, if you notice, the water use peaked as you move from 1957. It peaked in 1980, and it's gone down since then. And that's the reason why. Every single water use sector out there, whether you're an industrial user, a water provider like EPCOR, or agricultural water users, are required to meet these goals that are set by the Department of Water Resources to maintain their, within the state law. And so, somebody had a question about ag. They are required to have laser level fields. They were required to have lined canals, et cetera, et cetera. So each user out there has their own mandatory conservation requirements they have to meet. So we also have on our website, you can come visit, we help individual homeowners as much as we can reduce their water use. So we have free conservation kits we can give out, leak detection kits. Our online representatives on our operators to help customers, they spend a lot of time walking individuals through their bills to see where water wasting may be happening in their home. And so we spend a lot of time, a lot of effort to help down on that individual level. And as Ron mentioned, we see up to 60% or more of an individual household's water use is outdoor watering. So that's an area that everybody can look at and get a lot of bang for their buck on conservation. And each water provider is going to be a little bit different. So if you look at our systems, our new growing areas like in Santan and in the West Valley here in Agua Fria, those are new homes. They're really efficient. The water using appliances there, low flow shower heads, et cetera, that's all built in right now. In some of our older systems, like in the Sun Cities, that's older equipment in the homes. So as those get replaced, if we can encourage that, some of the different rebate programs that might be out there, that really kicks off some good water savings for those older homes.
Great. Well, thank you. So hopefully there's some ways you've heard that you can, find out more information and participate in the conservation efforts and incorporate that into your businesses and your projects. So I think unfortunately we're out of time. I think we could continue talking for a long time on these important topics, but I want to thank my panelists, and please join me in thanking my panelists today.
And that said, thank you for Laura for hosting the panel and participating.
Thank you. Thank you. So as we wrap up this discussion, we wanted to share a video, we get another video, addressing current and future water to meet the needs of growth from a community perspective.
Hi, I'm Eric Osborne, Mayor of Buckeye. I want to run out a quick update on a very important topic to all of us here in Buckeye, water. Recent headlines may lead you to believe that Arizona is out of water or a bad water steward, and that all development is coming to a halt. I've heard these concerns from my neighbors down the street to friends that live halfway across the country. Well, let me start by saying that Buckeye's water future is secure and it is not in danger. Buckeye has been working for years to diversify our water portfolio, and we currently have enough water resources to sustain our existing customers and the projected growth that already have certificates of assured water supply. The Hacienda subbasin is the aquifer that Buckeye gets most of its water from. A model was released earlier this year stating that this aquifer would be about 15% short on water demand over the next 100 years if all planned development was completely built out. And that's without making changes to water management strategies. Buckeye welcomed the release of this model. It gave us a starting point to start strategizing for the future. Since its release, we have had very productive meetings with the Arizona Department of Water Resources and the Cal Center for Water Policy. Together, we're working toward incorporating our groundwater management practices into the model and bringing it up to date. One of our goals is to make this model more dynamic. Since it was put together with data from 2016, Buckeye has acquired 2,000 acre-feet a year of non-Indian agriculture water rights. We've approved a purchase agreement for land that includes 5,926 acre-feet of water rights a year for the next 100 years from the Harquahala Valley. We continue to recharge 2,500 acre-feet a year of effluent. And on top of this, the city has implemented a drought management plan and strict conservation codes. Buckeye is in a great position with a bright future. Just as the East Valley faced similar challenges nearly 40 years ago, we have the opportunity to be at the forefront of innovative water solutions. As growth happens incrementally, so will these solutions. We continue to explore opportunities to enhance our water portfolio by participating in regional projects to augment groundwater, by implementing process improvements to efficiently manage water supplies, treatment, and delivery, by seeking long-term partnerships with local irrigation districts, by pursuing additional water-focused agreements with other West Valley cities. And we are hiring and contracting water industry leaders to assist Buckeye along the way. There can't be one single answer to these challenges. It will require time and collaboration, and Buckeye will be there every step of the way to ensure our water future is safe and sustainable. Thank you.